And turning now to some other news, Apple shareholders have rejected a proposal that would have scrapped the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. A conservative think tank drafted the plan to remove the company's diversity resources. It wanted Apple to join a wave of major companies who are ending their programs. But Apple shareholders voted overwhelmingly in favor of keeping the initiatives in place, with 97% of ballots cast against the plan to remove DEI. But that decision is an outlier among major U.S. businesses. The White House has openly pressured companies to reverse diversity programs, and a slew of them, especially those with federal contracts, have complied. Household names like Target, Pepsi, Walmart, and Google have all ended or retooled their programs. Joining us now, co-founder and CEO of All In Together, Lauren Leder. Lauren, so what do you make of Apple shareholders' decision to kind of swim against the current here and keep their diversity and inclusion programs?
Well, look, I think for companies that are consumer-facing like Apple, diversity and inclusion is really mission critical because it's about how they build products and services that are responsive to the marketplace, which is, in their case, the whole world. So I think, Apple's been very clear that they were not interested in, outside pressure on this and that they were going to prioritize their shareholders and prioritize the, business itself. I think what's been really interesting, Allie, is that, there's been a number of legal challenges to Donald Trump's executive order, which is really what set off the sort of panic in corporate America about whether or not DEI is legal, because Trump said it wasn't. But the first court case that came, that was ruled on just a week or so ago, the courts found that, that the president's actions were not legal, that there was nothing illegal per se about DEI. So in some ways, companies have responded in this knee-jerk way very quickly. And I think ultimately the courts are going to find, after 50 years of, work to sort of rectify discrimination in the workplace and elsewhere, there's very little reason to believe that suddenly now this is illegal just because Donald Trump wrote an executive order. It's just not what the Supreme Court affirmative action case said at all.
I also think you tug on a really important thread there when you make the case that Apple is responsive to what its consumers want. The more range of lived experience that you have sitting at the table means that more people are going to be able to have positive interactions with their product. That also applies in the political space. You and I talk about this so often, that diversity of people who are running and taking up space in office means that policy is just better for a larger swath of the American public. So if you're a consumer or if you're a politics-minded person, how can you be thinking about these DEI moves by the administration versus what actually would be borne out if you had more diverse people taking up these spaces?
Right. In business and democracy and government and everywhere. I mean, I think, and look, all the polls show that the vast majority of Americans really understand this. I mean, diversity is what this country was built on. And most Americans do understand that it should be a level playing field for all. I think the longer this goes on, the more we're going to see that some of the Trump administration's efforts, especially where they've, replaced, for instance, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, this extraordinarily qualified and capable African-American leader who earned, every accolade he's ever gotten, replaced with a less experienced white man. That kind of stuff, I think, really smacks as unfair to most Americans. I think the pendulum is going to swing back around.
The pendulum could swing back around, but there is a drawback here because after the pandemic, we saw women leaving the workforce. Yeah. You're seeing those kinds of programs begin to be rolled back. So even if the pendulum swings back, how much gain is being lost here by what the White House is doing?
I don't know. And I think that's the biggest question, and we're going to have to watch it carefully. There's no circumstances under which it's acceptable for qualified women and people of color to lose opportunities because somebody perceives it as unfair. If they're qualified, they should be getting those jobs.
Absolutely. Lauren Leder, thank you, as always, for joining.